Coming up on Network Africa. Top UN delegation visit areas affected by Ethiopia's civil war between the government and allied forces and Tigray rebels in Amhara. At the just concluded African Union Summit, African leaders call for more international recognition for the continent. Plus, Tunisian judiciary members locked out of work a day after President Kais Saied dissolves the country's main legal body. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin with stories and happenings that made headlines over the weekend. The story of a young boy who fell into a well in Morocco that gripped the whole nation ended tragically as the boy was found dead after days of rescue operations. Thousands of Malians took to the streets of Bamako to protest against French President Emmanuel Macron, and perhaps the highlight of the weekend was Senegal winning the Africa Cup of Nations for the very first time, edging out the Pharaohs of Egypt.
A 5-year-old boy who was trapped in a well in northern Morocco for 5 days was found dead on Saturday. Rescue workers retrieved the body of Ryan Amran, who fell into the well at his village of Ingren on Tuesday and was discovered after his family heard him crying. Footage from the scene showed hundreds of distraught onlookers gathered at the site chanting and shining their phone lights. The effort to save Ryan gripped people across Morocco and even Algeria on social media. The well was only 18 inches wide at the top and tapered as it dropped 100 feet to the bottom, making it impossible for rescuers to descend directly to where Ryan was trapped. King Mohammed sent condolences to his parents. Thousands of anti-French protesters took to the streets in Mali's capital, waving Russian flags and burning cardboard cutouts of French President Emmanuel Macron in celebration of the expulsion of France's envoy in Bamako. Mali expelled the French ambassador last week over what the country's transitional government described as hostile and outrageous comments by the former colonial power. Relations between Mali and its former colonizer have turned acrimonious after the junta, which seized power in August 2020, reneged on a promise to organize elections in February and propose holding power until 2025. The failure to hold elections has led to punishing economic and financial sanctions backed by France and other European countries, including travel bans and asset freezes. Finally, on Sunday night, Senegal erupted in celebration after its soccer team overcame Egypt to win the Africa Cup of Nations, giving the West African country its first tournament win after decades of heartbreaking near misses. Cheers, car horns and fireworks greeted the final whistle in the seaside capital Dakar after a hard-won victory and a penalty shootout in an instant erased Senegal's reputation as one of Africa's underachieving footballing nations. Fans at a watch party surrounding the landmark Africa Reborn monument jumped and cheered as the side finally won in the penalty shootout. It was a scene of pure joy for Senegalese soccer fans who have seen their fair share of sporting heartache and who in the last 2 years have suffered the restrictions and economic hardship caused by the COVID-19 pandemic.
To our main stories for today, as tensions grow between the military rulers in Mali and international partners, Germany's defense minister has suggested it is unlikely that the country will be able to maintain its troops in the country. Christine Lambrecht says she had the impression that German soldiers were no longer welcome in Mali, where they've been helping to fight against jihadists. Germany has around 1,200 soldiers in the country as part of a counter-terrorism and peacekeeping mission. It's a further sign that the international French-led counter-terrorism operation there is at risk of falling apart. France has been at the forefront of the criticism of the junta in Bamako after it scrapped plans for elections and said it wanted to stay in power for several years. UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed has visited areas affected by the civil war between government and allied forces and Tigray rebels in Ethiopia's Amhara region. Ms. Mohammed also held talks with regional officials to discuss the impact of the civil war. The UN delegation also visited Mekelle, that's the capital of the Tigray region. Government accuses the rebels of massacres and destruction of institutions in areas they had controlled in Amhara and Afar regions, and they in turn accuse government forces of numerous atrocities. The 35th African Union Summit held in Addis Ababa over the weekend, gathering heads of state and governments across the continent to discuss critical issues affecting Africa. While host country Ethiopia and other leaders called for greater representation at the United Nations and the international space. Would have more on the African Union summit. But in the meantime, the U.S. says it does not support or condone the unconstitutional changes of government that have taken place on the continent. U.S. Africa Commander General Stephen Townsend made this known during a telephone press conference with journalists from around the continent. According to General Townsend, corruption and a lack of governance is probably behind the military takeovers seen, and that this has a broader effect on democracy and the progress of democracy.
I think we've enjoyed nearly 20 years or so of very low numbers of coups or irregular or unconstitutional changes of government. But here in the last year, we have seen a number of them, and to include a number of attempted coups. So I don't know why all that is, but my guess is that it has to do with insufficient governance, a lack of good governance, and corruption. I think that's probably the most of it. And so, as you know, as I said in my opening statement, the U.S. does not support or condone these unconstitutional changes of government and the broader effect they have on democracy and the progress of democracy. But I think that corruption and a lack of good governance is probably behind much of that.
The head of Tunisia's Supreme Judicial Council says police have locked the doors to their offices and have stopped the judges from entering the building. This is coming a day after President Kais Saied dissolved the country's main legal body. Judge Youssef Bouzaka said the dissolution of the council is illegal and that his staff would carry on overseeing an independent judiciary inquiry. However, President Saied says he is trying to rid the country of corruption and reset the 2011 revolution, but his moves have raised fears among civil society groups who see this as the latest step in his consolidation of power. Well, still in Tunisia, over 160 migrants have been rescued at sea off the coast near Sfax in the southeast region, of which most of them are Tunisians. The country's navy says the migrants, which include young children, were attempting to reach Italy. According to a statement released by the ministry, the illegal migrants were rescued from a sinking boat off the town of El Louza. Thousands of illegal immigrants attempt to cross the Mediterranean Sea every year, and Tunisia is one of the main points of access to Europe through irregular channels. Last year, more than 55,000 migrants made the crossing from Tunisia or neighboring Libya, almost double the total of the year before. 3 people have been reported dead in southeastern Madagascar after Cyclone Batsirai made landfall, leaving a trail of devastation, including collapsed buildings, power cuts and flooding. On Sunday, roads were flooded and some houses in the central city of Fanaransoa were submerged. Buildings and their contents were also damaged by rising water.
Cyclone Batsirai swept inland late on Saturday, February the 5th, slamming into Madagascar's eastern coastline with heavy rains and winds speeds of 165 kilometers per hour. It was projected it could displace as many as 150,000 people.
We live on a hill on the edge of a cliff. The wind was strong, but our house is strong. Early in the morning, there was a landslide. To be safe, the head of the neighborhood told us to go to the evacuation center. That's why we are here.
A neighborhood representative in Fanaransoa, 420 kilometers south of the capital, said no deaths were reported in her area, but the damage done was huge.
I can say the damage is big. The wind was very strong, and even if people took care to protect their belongings, there has been a lot of damage. Early in the morning, water rose and all the neighborhood was underwater.
The United Nations and its humanitarian partners are ramping up preparedness efforts for about 600,000 people that are directly affected.
We anticipate a significant humanitarian impact in Madagascar, including in areas that are still recovering from Tropical Storm Anna in late January. Our efforts under the government of Madagascar's leadership include preparing for the pre-deployment of search and rescue capacity and response teams to areas likely to be impacted, aircrafts being placed on standby to support rapid assessment and response.
The damage from the storm system is compounding the destruction wreaked by another cyclone, Anna, which hit the island just 2 weeks ago, killing 55 people and displacing 130,000 people.
We are in the tropical cyclone season in the Indian Ocean, so we are going to see cyclones. We are going to see rainfall. Madagascar, it has been a drier, wet season, than normal so far. It's not uniform across the whole of Madagascar, and it's really southern Madagascar where there really is the bad drought that we've all been reading about and seeing. So, and at this stage, it's not completely clear, if the rainfall from this cyclone is going to hit the whole of the drought-affected area.
Due to the arid conditions at this time of the year, there is increased risks of flash flood and landslides during extreme rainfall, such as predicted for Cyclone Batsirai.
Still ahead on the program. Government in Senegal declares Monday a public holiday after the national team wins the Africa Cup of Nations. Join us again. Welcome back to the program. We continue with highlights from the 35th African Union Summit that held in Addis Ababa over the weekend.
The 35th African Union Summit opening event saw speeches delivered by at least 3 heads of state, as well as the AU chairperson Moussa Faki Mahamat and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed used his speech to call for a permanent seat for Africa on the UN Security Council and urge the AU to form a continental media house to counter negative media representation of Africa.
It is the right time to reform and revitalize the United Nations system to reflect current global realities and ensure that it is a more representative and equitable body. Only fair representation and transparency in those institutions can usher in a just era in multilateralism. Consistent with our Esluini Consensus of 2005, we should collectively insist that Africa's reasonable request for no less than 2 permanent seats and 5 non-permanent seats in the UN Security Council be adopted.
This year, the theme of the Assembly of the African Union is Building Resilience in Nutrition on the African Continent, accelerate the human capital, social and economic development. The continent is being urged to place more emphasis on the growth of the agricultural sector.
Les tentatives d'approche de l'Afrique.
AU Commission Chair Musa Faki Mahamat told leaders at the opening ceremony that the security situation in Africa requires the bloc to take new approach and called for what he calls more active inter-African solidarity.
Les tentatives d'approche de l'Afrique sont multiples.
Obviously, there are several attempts to approach Africa. This shows, without a doubt, an increased interest in the continent. But this interest, frankly, has not yet led to a developmentalist and substantial consideration in favor of Africa. The idea, once dangled in front of us, of a Marshall Plan in favor of the continent has unraveled. I am not far from thinking that such a plan, though necessary, will never come from the outside. Here, more than ever, the African leadership is forcefully challenged to mobilize internal resources that reveal the immense potential of the continent. This is the only way of an African direction for Africa.
Nigeria was adequately represented by President Muhammadu Buhari, who met with several other heads of state. The surge of conflict and coups was a major concern to the president and his Ethiopian counterpart, Abiy Ahmed. The two leaders, who were unanimous in their views, note that Africa needs visionary leadership to attain unhindered growth and development and also provide disincentive to forces of instability. President Buhari commended the effort of Prime Minister Ahmed in maintaining peace and unity in his country and his dedication to ensuring fairness and justice in development. The 35th AU Summit also saw President Macky Sall of Senegal take over as AU's new chairperson for this year. He replaces the President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Félix Tshisekedi. In their speeches, both leaders reiterated the need for African unity.
We need to step up our efforts and strengthen the spirit of solidarity to overcome once and for all the coronavirus and also ensure the economic recovery of countries and to ensure a better future of our planet.
Leaders continue to call for the continent to have a bigger role on the international stage amid signs the bloc is trying to forge a coordinated response to challenges from coups to COVID-19 and climate change.
Well, joining us now for discussions on this is Kwame Gonza, a Pan-Africanist. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you so much for inviting me, my sister.
I believe you monitored the summit in Addis Ababa over the weekend. African leaders calling for more global recognition. We had the Ethiopian Prime Minister, asking for a seat on the UN Security Council. What would you say the summit, what gains would you say the summit made?
Yes, indeed. I want to thank you very much once again for inviting me. I think that it was a very important summit in the sense that the leaders were able to come together and articulate and look at the problems that are facing the continent and voice out, for example, the need for Africa to be recognized more at the United Nations and given seats at the United Nations Security Council. And a lot of talk has been going on. But we, as the young people of the continent, what we are saying is that the organization needs to be strengthened a little bit more. The organization, which I mean is the African Union, it needs to be strengthened a little bit more, like in one of the speeches, which was very instrumental, which was given by the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed. He said that we want a prosperous Africa. We want a united, political continent. So that means for us to get respect out of the world, out of the Africa from other parts of the world, like the organizations like the UN, we need to strengthen ourselves at home first. We need to be decisive. You could see that there is a lot of indecision in the leaders, that they are still failing to put their head together, and this can be detrimental to development. We can talk, we can meet maybe after every 2 years or every year, at the African Union in Addis Ababa. But on top of that, we need to emphasize the need for strengthening ourselves in form of a union, a united, African government. That has never been achieved like how it was in 1963 when they initiated it. And it has never been, needed more today than ever before. So we need to look at it carefully in order for us to be respected by the rest of the world so that we don't only appeal to their consciousness.
So in strengthening the home base, like you just said, there are challenges the continent is facing, coups, COVID-19, climate change, which these issues dominated discussions, at the summit. In your opinion, how can Africa, overcome these challenges?
Indeed, thank you so much. Indeed, the coups are a problem to the continent and the stability of the continent, with the fact that we have just assigned and operationalized the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So if we have a continent which is unstable, then people will not be able to trade. But let us address this problem in its reality. Why are people taking up coups? Because when we look at these coups, most of the people who have led these coups are young people, 41 years and below 40. So we should ask ourselves why is this happening? Is because there is some grievances that have been, not addressed. That is why we are seeing that the young people have become restless, and this is going to continue if the African leaders don't come together to address this issue with a union government, because the union government will help Africa to utilize its resources, comprehensively. What we are seeing now is that in countries like Nigeria, the tension is there, but the tension has gone down. We remember the Lekki massacre, which happened in Nigeria. That movement went underground, and it is still building up. So when these kind of things explode, it becomes, very problematic to the continent, makes the continent very unstable. So we need to address the root cause of the problems, not just condemning the coups. The coups, they are not a good thing. But in addition to that, we need to address the fundamental problem. This is a socio-economic problem. So it is not only about democracy. Democracy is good, but we need to address the problems of the people, because without addressing the socio-economic problems of the people, democracy becomes meaningless to the people.
All right then, Kwame Gonza, a Pan-Africanist, thank you for speaking to us on Network Africa.
Thank you so much for having me.
It has been a heartbreaking time for the past few days in Morocco. And even today, even as the country prepares to bury the little Ryan, that's the 5-year-old boy who died after being trapped in a well for 4 days. Ryan Oram fell down the 32-meter well on February 1st, sparking a painstaking effort to rescue him, and that drew attention from all over the world. In Morocco, hundreds gathered at the well and thousands more followed the rescue efforts online. Well, his funeral is being held in his village, the northern Rif Mountains, where the tragedy unfolded. Well, when the boy was finally pulled out on Saturday evening, his rescue was initially met with cheers from the crowd, but unfortunately turned into heartbreak minutes later when it was announced that the rescue was too late and the boy had died. Well, it's a sad one there. On a more cheery note, Senegal's President Macky Sall has declared Monday a public holiday to celebrate the national football team's win at the Africa Cup of Nations. The president, who is out of the country, cancelled the last leg of his trip to welcome back the football stars to Senegal. President Sall is expected to greet the team on Tuesday at the presidential palace. Well, Senegal won their first AFCON final after 2 previous defeats in 2019 and 2002. They beat Egypt 4-2 on penalties on Sunday to earn their victory after the match ended goalless following extra time. We have joining us now Ruth McLean, New York Times Senegal Bureau Chief. She joins us via phone from Dakar. Hello, Ruth. Thank you for speaking to us. Let's begin with the mood in the country at this time. We understand celebrations ran through the night in Senegal.
Sadio Mane scored the winning penalty kick, and Dakar, the Senegalese capital, just exploded. People were jumping up and down, dancing on tables, screaming at each other, playing drums. I saw loads of people with cans of mosquito repellent, making them into blowtorches. The mood was just wild and wonderful, and it hasn't stopped. I'm in my apartment in Dakar, and I'm quite set back from the main road, but I can still hear all the cars honking their horns, and the celebrations continuing, and it's now over 12 hours later. I watched it in a bar. I was in Cameroon for some of the tournament, but for the final I was back here at my home base in Dakar, and I walked home after the match had ended, and it was just incredible. The roads were full of cars, all full of people dressed up in the Senegalese maillot, the Senegalese jerseys and colors, and with red, yellow, and green makeup on, the colors of the Senegalese flag. And everybody was just screaming and joyful and blowing vuvuzelas and having the most wonderful time. The streets were completely blocked with traffic. I have friends who said that it took them like 3 hours to get home, where it would normally take them maybe about 15 minutes. People were on top of the cars, and if you walk down the street, people were just yelling at each other, just things like Sadio Mane, or Allez Senegal, go Senegal, or Senegal rek, so only Senegal in Wolof. So the mood has just been incredible.
That really sounds incredible, a win for Senegal, and it seems like a win for West Africa. But thank you so much, Ruth McClear, the New York Times Senegal Bureau Chief. Well, that's where we end the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.